Yesterday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his troops are seeing positive results as Ukrainian troops make gains in several regions, following a massive counteroffensive launched on Russian-occupied areas. However, Zelensky warned that a threat of nuclear war is still on the table. During an interview with CBS's Face the Nation, Zelensky said of Putin, he wants to scare the whole world, adding that nuclear war could be a reality. Meanwhile, the U.S. has privately warned Russia that they will face catastrophic consequences if it deploys nuclear weapons in Ukraine, according to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. But just last week, Putin publicly acknowledged that Ukraine and Russia were close to a peace settlement before the West intervened. Let's watch.
And I want to say that publicly for the first time, after the start of the special military operation, also at the Istanbul negotiations, there was a very positive reaction to our proposals concerning ensuring the security of Russia. But it was obvious that the West was not happy with a peaceful decision. So after reaching certain compromises, they effectively were given a direct order to undermine the negotiations.
So is peace still possible? According to journalist Aaron Maté, despite the opposing narrative, it's not too late to pursue diplomacy. Aaron Maté himself joins us to discuss further. Thanks for joining us, Aaron.
Good to be here.
So what is your argument for why peace is still possible?
Well, look, the fact that Putin claims, whether he's right or not, that there was a peace settlement and that it was wrecked by the West shows that there's an opportunity here. I mean, if Putin's telling the truth, then that peace option could be revived. And if he's lying, the West could call his bluff and say, let's have diplomacy. But what is the West doing? You just heard Jake Sullivan talk about how the U.S. has to keep fighting Russia, continue with the strategy of sending more and more weapons. How is that conducive to peace at a time when, as everybody acknowledges, nuclear threats are escalating? The fact is, Putin's comment did not come with any evidence, but he wasn't the first to make it. The claim that a peace deal was close actually originates with sources close to Vladimir Zelensky. That claim first surfaced in Ukrainian media in May when Ukrainian media reported that Russia and Ukraine were close to a deal, but Boris Johnson, the then British Prime Minister, came to Kiev and told Zelensky not to negotiate, and that if you do, we will not back you up. That was further corroborated by Fiona Hill, who's a former White House expert, who said there was a deal tentatively reached. So there are signs that diplomacy was possible and close to fruition. There's no reason why it shouldn't be tried right now, especially at a time when more people are being sent off to die and the nuclear threat is escalating.
Yeah, let's pick up that thread a little bit. Aaron, why aren't people in the national security apparatus and frankly in the mainstream media more alarmed by the increasing likelihood of a catastrophic nuclear confrontation? And look, I get that it's not a strong possibility. It remains thankfully very unlikely, but look, a 1% chance of this is not that's not acceptable. It could be the death of our species. Bad. So why is this not? People are just kind of going, oh yeah, we more reason to be worried. Are people kidding? Are they not? What don't they get about this?
You're identifying the sick experiment that this entire proxy war has been. Yes, it's unlikely that we're going to have nuclear Armageddon. But the problem is our leaders have been willing to flirt with the risk. They've been willing to increase the chances, which is just insane, especially given that this war could have easily been avoided had there been serious negotiations before. And there's a long record of this, but I don't think the U.S. was ever interested in pursuing diplomacy with Russia in any kind of meaningful way that could address Russia's serious security concerns, no matter what you think of Russia's decision to invade, which I think personally was illegal and wrong. But yes, I think the goal, as articulated by Lloyd Austin, of weakening Russia and using Ukraine to fight Russia to the last person, as Lindsey Graham put it, supersedes avoiding the risk of nuclear war from the point of view of U.S. officials.
And your piece, which is up at your Substack, and I really recommend it, you quote or you cite David Ignatius, the journalist, and he is arguing that this moment provides an off-ramp for for Biden and Putin potentially. Can you expand on that?
Yes, David Ignatius, who has sources very well placed inside the U.S. intelligence community, wrote a very interesting article when I think he was the only mainstream U.S. journalist who even acknowledged Putin's rather extraordinary claim that the U.S. and its allies wrecked a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. And Ignatius not only noted this, but said that Putin's comment offers an off-ramp. It shows that Putin is at least rhetorically open to negotiations. So why not seize that moment? And in fact, Ignatius compared it to the message privately sent by Khrushchev to Kennedy that helped end the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was, the last time that the world faced such a dire nuclear threat. But right now, in this, modern day Cuban Missile Crisis, there is no high-level diplomacy that we can see, at least publicly, going on, and that is just criminal. Now, I should say, in fairness to the U.S. government, I did write to two separate U.S. agencies, the State Department and the National Security Council, to get their response to Putin's claim. The NSC told me actually that broadly, Putin's claim that the U.S. discouraged peace talks was inaccurate. They did say that. The State Department didn't actually address Putin's claim, but no one specifically rebutted what he said about these specific peace talks in the spring. And I just think right now, no matter what happened back then many months ago, no matter what opportunities were sabotaged, whether Putin's exaggerating or not, it doesn't matter. The point is now, any opportunity possible for diplomacy needs to be seized.
Right, because we're coming on the wake of some Ukrainian successes militarily. It's their country; they're defending their country. The support for doing so is great. But now is the time, isn't it? I mean, now is always the time, obviously, for diplomacy. But Putin, the risk to Putin's government, to his legitimacy in Russia, is threatened to some degree by these losses. Maybe not. I'm not naive. I'm not saying he's about to fall from power or something. But he politically, it's in his best interest, likely, to find a way out of this conflict. It's obviously in the Ukrainians' interest, and it's in our interest because we don't want to keep funding this thing. There's no support for doing it at home. So you would think that these are three involved forces who all have incentive to have this be the end. Maybe some face-saving measure for Putin, and then the end of this conflict. And we should do that. So what's getting in the way of that happening?
I think what's getting in the way is the imperative of proxy war goals, the determination by some people in the White House and State Department to bleed Russia for as long as possible, to extend this war for as long as they can. Because again, the stated goal, as articulated by Lloyd Austin, was to weaken Russia, not to defend Ukraine, but to weaken Russia. And if you extend Russia in a long proxy war, just as the U.S. did to the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, you can achieve that goal. But look, as you say, there are opportunities here for everyone to save face. Ukraine did achieve some battlefield success in Kharkiv. They routed Russian forces from thousands of miles of territory. And overall, Ukraine has done far better militarily than most people, including myself, expected. So there's plenty that Ukraine can point to and saying, we defended our country, and now it's time to end this war before more territory is lost. And even David Ignatius, who we talked about before, this very closely tied columnist in terms of sources with the intelligence community, says that Kiev needs a reality check about its battlefield prospects. That's an awareness on Ignatius's part that these battlefield successes are probably not guaranteed for Ukraine because they're facing just a far bigger foe. And no matter how many weapons the U.S. can pour in, which admittedly has made a difference in Ukraine's favor, that cannot continue for the long term, especially since so many Ukrainian forces are dying. So now is a great time to pursue any possible off-ramp and declare victories with the successes that Ukraine has already had.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And stay tuned for more Rising right after this.